So this week we find out with the Atlantic gets firsthand knowledge of what we plan to do as far as our military raids. This is a complicated story. Okay, I look at it, first of all, I think the journalist is an idiot for disclosing the fact that he was on that list. It doesn't take him anywhere. Wouldn't you have waited a little long and said, wait a second, this isn't that big of a story. Let me wait till they give me some real inside information and then I'll do something with it. But it's a journalist mentality. I got to run my mouth. I got to say I got this. I would have been sat there silently saying, wow, I'm on this email list. Nobody seems to know it. Let me wait for the big story. What do you think?
Oh, yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, when you're dealing with something that already happened, you got to think there is a thing as ethics in journalism.
Yes.
And so and depending on who you talk to, whether or not the Atlantic columnist is an ethical journalist is one thing, or whether he's politicized. But the fact of the matter is he did wait until after the event happened,
yes,
so he's not breaking any news. He didn't say what he said were the secretive aspects of the conversation and those that could have been war plans, but he did mention that they were there. So, I think if I were him, I might have waited until something bigger came along, but I don't know if that's quite ethical.
Oh, okay, well, wait a second. Did he have a duty to disclose it? Probably not, to disclose, hey, I'm on this. This is the same thing. If you think back, this is what we accused Hillary of. Hillary was using her private email address for government kind of work. And I mean, it's a story that never went away. I think this story goes away pretty quickly because A, the raid, worked out. Second of all, the journalist at least had enough ethics to say, I'm not going to disclose it till after the fact. But what else do you see about this story?
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate. I think that you're absolutely right in that it will probably just be brushed aside.
Yeah, it'll be. It's a week-long story.
But the problem is that the reason why it was such a big deal when Hillary did it, the reason why it was such a big deal when Trump had his classified documents in Mar-a-Lago, the reason why it was such a big deal when Biden had his classified documents in his basement next to his car,
exactly,
is because this is all information that could lead to the harm of U.S. citizens, or that could damage our standing in the world. And if people get a hold of that, it's bad. So we need to have very good structures, which is a SCIF and other ways to make sure that this secretive information stays secretive.
Well,
and it doesn't do that.
It needs to be cause and effect. If you did this, there's a price to pay for doing it. But at the end of the day, with Trump, nothing developed. With Biden, nothing. I mean, if you take a look at both of those, we really never knew what Biden had there in his garage. I mean, the media, God, we don't want to talk about it. With Trump, at the end of the day, we never really fully understood what he had. There are all these accusations. I wonder if he's got this, I wonder if he's got, but nothing really came out of this. This is pretty direct, though. This is where the government says, hey, let's put this journalist on the list.
Well, that's why it should be a bigger deal, and that's why we're talking about it, right? Because it's not only the fact that one person did it, it was a whole team. You had your head of DNI, you had your vice president.
How many eyes were on it? Yeah, that's your point.
You had so many different people that you could confirm were on this text thread that were able to speak about openly what their strategy was. And it's something that any of our foreign adversaries would love to know.
And Waltz, of course, had some relationship with the Atlantic. No more. The Atlantic, you talk about being cut out of the whole scene. They ain't ever going to walk into the White House again and have access to anything. But I really, as I looked at the story, I said, why did you blow it here? You were on this list. I don't know that you had a duty to disclose, hey, I'm on the list. Maybe when you got the story, you had the duty to disclose, well, I've got the story. But maybe a bigger story, because this is not like a huge story.
I agree with you. I will say this. I think that if you want to give the journalist the most optimistic view, it would be that he was doing something which was sounding the alarm so that way something greater didn't happen.
Yeah.
If they were doing this and they had multiple text threads up and they had other people that shouldn't have been on it, and if they were in fact giving out secretive and top secret information on public data.
But do you make a telephone call? Do you say, hey, I'm on this list, you sent me this? Or do you do what the journalists want to do? Hey, I'm bigger than life.
Well,
I'm breaking a story.
I think you break the story.
Okay, all right, good enough. Good enough. Well, he broke the story too soon is my point.
Yeah.
He probably should have waited a little bit longer. Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks, Pat.
Matt, it seems like almost every day we're seeing some judge making a decision about some element of what Trump's doing with his new policies. I like that some of them are saying, look, you're going too far, okay? You can't do this, Trump, and I want to challenge that. What's happening, though, when you're looking at the rest of that story, is the American public is going, really? Here you've got a president that we've elected, and we've said we want these policies to take place. And we cast our vote based on the fact that I, as an American, wanted those policies to take place. And the message is that the judiciary is interfering with all that. And it's dangerous for the judiciary, I think, unless they take a close look at how they do this.
It's not a healthy place to be, and it's not a good interaction between the executive branch and the judiciary. I mean, we've kind of seen this, it's not uncommon with Trump, but let's go ahead and take a moment here to pull back and look at the law. Let's pull up the law real quick. The issue here with these deportations, it was called the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. Now, it's an 18th century law. It was actually put into effect back when we were concerned about the French, going to war with the French.
Right. Now, has there been any interpretation of it since then?
There is throughout the 20th century, and actually it was used in the War of 1812, it was used during the First World War, and we all know it was used during the Second World War as well. And Woodrow Wilson's executive administration actually put up challenges, and so we have a long history of arguments on this, previous presidents, but none of that, Pat, gets really brought into play here. Instead, we go into this quick discourse that you were just talking about.
Well, okay, so you've got a judge who's at least unilaterally said, I don't believe it applies, turn the airplanes around, bring these folks back to the United States. And Trump just absolutely thumbs his nose at it.
Yeah.
And the point is if you look at the reaction from the American public, it is that Trump did the right thing. Now, that's really dangerous.
Oh, yes.
Where it comes to the rule of law in the United States, you've got a federal judge saying, look, I don't know whether I'm right. I'm going to go forward with a temporary injunction. So what you have is a judge who right now he's under attack from every corner, okay? They're digging up his past. They're taking a look at everything the guy's done. They're making it, the American public says, this is simply an extension of the Democratic Party, all right? That's where he's placed himself. Now, was that improper for him to do that? If he had a real belief that this particular statute has no application, saying, I'm going to enter a temporary injunction, there's no harm in that. But picking their fights is my point to the judiciary. Picking your fights to where the American public doesn't believe that judiciary, lower level courts in the judiciary, are trying to determine what this president does.
Absolutely. And I think there absolutely is a question of constitutionality here, which is, this Wartime Powers Act is a question of, were we at war? Is there an incursion or invasion? And does the president have the authority to use the act under the circumstances at hand? It's a legitimate question. Of course, like you just said, the pressure comes in, though, and whether or not he can even have a moment to breathe to say, listen, if you want to challenge it, go through the appellate process, but I'm making my decision right now until we can make sense of it.
Okay, and he has a right to do that.
Yes,
he has the
does.
right to look at this statute and say, it doesn't have application here. We're not under invasion. We're not being... there's some argument that we are, and Trump can make the DOJ.
That's the courts. That's the courts to battle it out with, right?
The DOJ can make that argument,
right?
But the point is, I guess what scares me just a little bit is every day if you have a federal judge saying to Trump, "You can't do this. The American public wanted you to do that, but you can't. You can't do that. The American public wanted you to do that, but you can't do it." Right. What ends up happening is the judiciary really ends up suffering. And if we don't follow the rule of law, we don't have a democracy. That's why I'm saying that these decisions are important. When to pick a fight, when not to pick a fight. You can't have every judge who simply doesn't like Trump saying, no, I'm not going to let you do it. I think it's a really dangerous course.
Well, and we also talked about this. We don't like the idea of these neutral entities getting all of a sudden tugged into this dogfight that we currently have, which is the American political discourse, right? And we've seen them with the FBI. They want no business to be involved in politics, yet here they are time and again. They're dragged into one issue after the next after the next.
Good point. You're saying if we go back and we look at why the FBI is suffering, right?
Yeah, we go back.
Why are they suffering?
Right.
It's because it appeared to the American public that they were playing politics, that they were embracing the Democrats and causing problems for the Republicans. So now look at their credibility. The credibility problem with the FBI is dismal right now. It's below 50% favorability.
And it's terrible. And those guys don't want any business in its politics. I mean, they want to stay out and do their job, but it's like you try to make maybe one side happy or try to avoid a conflict. Look what happened with Comey back in 2016 with that Hillary Clinton report. At the end, both sides went after him for that. And all of a sudden you steamroll. And so we're worried about that with the courts now.
We're seeing the same pattern as what you're saying.
Exactly.
So all we have to do is learn from what happened to the FBI.
Right.
The FBI right now is being disassembled. Okay. Yeah. You're gonna see the FBI scattered. The folks that are in Washington D.C., they're going to end up in Alaska. Mm-hmm. They're going to end up in the middle of nowhere, and that's the way they're going to deal with the FBI. They're going to deconstruct the FBI. The point is with the judiciary. It's too important to our democracy to have what looks like knee-jerk reactions, because what we're seeing with this judge right now, if you don't believe the Republicans can go back and take a look at his history, his relationship with the Democratic Party, his involvement with the Russiagate, he was involved with that. Right. He's touching all of these things that the American public is nauseated about. Right. And so he has the right to say, wait, I want to enter a temporary injunction until we can have a full hearing on this. But it can become real dangerous if it's overused.
And well, you know what? And this is what Trump does. The executive branch I really think they're not acting appropriate here because we don't want to circumvent the law to do so. Well, yeah. We just got to ask for patience in that regard. Is it fair to say we could just ask for patience? And of course, I don't think Trump's really done it. He's finger pointing a lot in this instance, and it would be much better for the political discourse if he refrained, maybe for once from doing that.
Well, he could. I mean, the truth is, even if they have due process, I've seen the due process. I mean, these are 15, 20-minute hearings. Yeah. I mean, it's not like it's going to, it's almost a rubber stamp. Yeah. Government present this, does this meet this threshold? Well, they're gone. Right. So the due process on something like immigration is such a small threshold. It's not like he can't accomplish what he wants to accomplish. But this judge, again, I come back to the point. Be careful when it starts looking like, well, I'm just doing this because I'm an extension of the Democratic Party. That gets really dangerous, and it really poses a risk to the rule of law because we start doubting the judiciary.